Not every kingdom is equal. Not every king has the same kind of power. And even today, you have certain powers and certain governments, and the government is maybe very limited. And we actually look for it. We actually appreciate when the government power is somewhat subject to accountability and so on. But there's also people and governors that rule, and they don't have that kind of scrutiny. And sometimes it is because they just are a very charismatic leader. Maybe that's the first king that maybe put the empire together. And just historically, we can think of people like, let's say, Stalin. All right, Stalin had a tremendous amount of power, being in the USSR, took over after Lenin died, and he killed a lot of people. Millions of people were slaughtered by him, and so he ended up being basically this unquestioned leader, and he can just do anything he wanted. Okay, accountability or not, it doesn't matter, right? So you have here. Stalin may be an example of a king, kind of like Nebuchadnezzar, but kind of do what you want. If you have an enemy, just kill them. And that's kind of Nebuchadnezzar what he did, which is strange because I don't think anybody is looking at Stalin as favorably as maybe some people would look at Nebuchadnezzar. All right, but I don't see that much of a difference between Stalin and Nebuchadnezzar. Right? It's just some guy that turned out to be in the right place in the right time. He had certain ability to take over certain things, and he put himself in power and so on. So here you have a despot, a dictator, running a country. And you can see that Stalin had a lot more power than, let's say, subsequent presidents. Khrushchev or Brezhnev or and so on. Same thing happened with the British Empire. When you think like, let's say, King Henry the sixth or eighth, the one that supposedly killed his 6 wives. Was it 8? Yeah. So I don't know if that's really true that he killed them all, but he was definitely more like a despot. He had certain authority, and kind of run his show the way he wanted, and was never afraid to even say to the church in Rome, right? I'm not going to be subservient to you. Napoleon was a guy like that. Napoleon had a tremendous amount of power, and it was very popular among the people, and he just had that kind of power. But when you look at, let's say, 100 years later, after King Henry VIII, when you had these kings like Charles and James and so on, they didn't have that kind of power. They were a lot more subject to scrutiny by Parliament and so on. Philly! And so on. So you can see that within the same context, within the same framework, a type of a government, you can have governments that have a lot more power to a point that nobody questions that. All right. So when we saw this prophecy about what Nebuchadnezzar saw, the head of gold, and then everything else down the body, the Bible tells us that the head of gold represents the most glorious, the most powerful, the most unquestioned authority of the king. And as he goes down, it is kind of mixed. It is partially strong, partially clay. The glory is not as great. And so that's what we saw with that statue. And we know that statue eventually actually completely crumbled down by being hit by a stone cut without hand. And then that statue completely crumbled down, fell apart, fell into little tiny pieces to a dust, and then the wind blew it away, and then there was no empire left. The Bible tells us that that is a prophecy. That's a prophecy that we'll see again, not yet, in chapter 7, but that's a prophecy of a history of the world from that point onward. And the Bible explains to us the first one is Babylon, the second one is Persia, Media, the third one is Macedonia, and then the fourth one, the fourth kingdom, is the Roman Empire, the final empire. Now, people think, well, we are no longer in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire pretty much existed all the way to Hitler. I mean, remember Hitler called it the Third Reich, right? Remember he wanted to, why did he call it Third Reich? Anybody knows why Third Reich? Reich stands for empire. So why, he called it Third Empire. Why third? So you had a Roman Empire, and the reason he called it Third Empire is because there was a Second Empire. So Roman Empire was the first empire. There was Caesar and all that during Jesus. But the Second Empire was basically the Holy Roman Empire, right? So have you heard about the term Holy Roman Empire? That's a different thing than Roman Empire. What happened that eventually the power came from Roman Empire, from a Caesar or whatever, and it came on Vatican. So it still was in Vatican, ruled from Rome. That's in Vatican, right? Rome. And then now it was this divine, I guess, power. So Vatican basically ruled through religion the kingdoms of the world. And this was going on, all the way to Napoleon. Napoleon was, he wasn't crowned by the Pope. He took the crown from the Pope, put it on himself. Remember? Do you know? He had a hard time to accept the power of the Vatican. That was the problem also in England. The King Henry basically said, no, I am no longer subject to the Pope, right? And then you had wars between Ireland and Britain, and between all these different attempts to assassinate the king, one after another, and it goes back and forth. Some are for the Pope, some are against him. You had a 30-year war after 1620, or 1620 was the end of the So you had that period of history where you had people constantly struggling about submission to Rome. And so when Rome decided in, let's say, 1400, 1600, that somebody was a heretic, like they decided about John Huss, that John Huss was a heretic, then the authority, the king, would kill that heretic. So actually Vatican themselves didn't do the killing. It would be done by the political power. But who was deciding who's going to be killed? It was the Vatican. Who was deciding who's going to be king? It was the Vatican. So it was this period of so-called Holy Roman Empire. And I'm originally from Czechoslovakia, so actually Prague was at one point a capital of the Holy Empire. And during the time, Prague kind of blossomed architecturally and so on. So that was the Holy Roman Empire. So in some ways, it kind of continues. We are kind of in that system in some ways all the time. If you look at a lot of stuff that you see in European Union, how European Union was started and major key documents were signed, I can show you pictures of basically signing it under the authority of a pope, in a form of a sculpture. But it's a pretty nasty picture, the one I saw. You see all these politicians signing these documents. I don't know, I think it was the Lisbon Treaty, which is the newest sort of a constitution of the European Union. So which is why people sometimes suggest, well, it's the European Union that is then the Roman Empire. But it goes much beyond it. We have a Catholic Church in our country, in the United States, in Africa, everywhere, right? So some people would also then say, well, then it's a Catholic Church. It's the Catholic Church. Well, they're definitely involved in it, but it is, before Holy Roman Empire, there was no Holy Roman Empire, right? There was no Pope, and it was the Fourth Kingdom. So in some ways, it is some sort of a continuation of the same thing. And I think that we are heading towards probably some sort of a climax where everything is going to somehow consolidate under some kind of world empire. And I can bet you that, for example, Catholic Church is very much involved in that process, right? They're very much in it, and I think we all are heading to that direction. So maybe that's really indeed that Fourth Empire is just taking so long, right? Hence Hitler, when he came with his idea of Third Reich, he was going to establish a new kind of empire. It would be like the first, second, and now it's going to be third. Well, it didn't last long. But it's not like we destroy Hitler, now we got rid of him, and now we are free from that idea of Third Reich. No, we're not. We're still building the same thing, right? Hence this whole idea to demonize Hitler while at the same time put a blind eye to other developments that are happening in this world, is a little blind and naive and hypocritical. You know, whatever Hitler was trying to do, the other people are trying to build too. They just didn't wanna fight about this with Hitler, right? That's really what's going on. So that's a bit of a context. So let's read now the chapter 4, because we've seen in chapter 3, we've seen this confrontation with between the king and the three friends of Daniel, and we saw that Nebuchadnezzar discovered and learned that there is somebody greater, there is somebody that can deliver him out of Nebuchadnezzar's hand. So it was a great lesson for everybody. For the three young men, it was a great lesson for Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar learned that there is something greater about God than just he's able to interpret dreams. He's actually also able to completely escape the danger of fire. An extremely powerful entity out there that Nebuchadnezzar at first was not aware of. And now it's going to be third story, I should say, in chapter 4, and that's kind of the end of Nebuchadnezzar. So it's not the end of Daniel. Daniel continues, but it's kind of the end of Nebuchadnezzar. In chapter 5, it's the end of Babylonian Empire. And basically, in the end of chapter 5, you have a new empire. It's the end of Babylon, and Persia Media takes over under Darius. All right, and and they're gonna rule for some time. So let's just read it little bit by little. In Daniel chapter 4, we read, Nebuchadnezzar the king and all the people, nations and languages that dwell in all the earth. Peace be multiplied unto you. I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God has wrought toward me. How great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. So this is an interesting start to the chapter. It's almost like, do I read it right? I mean, is Nebuchadnezzar talking here? This whole chapter is essentially Nebuchadnezzar's chapter. And I think he is telling a story after a whole story happened, all right? And it's primarily Nebuchadnezzar's writing. I think that Daniel put it down in his writing or whatever, but I think he literally took a copy from Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, I'm going to put it inside this book. So we have actually Nebuchadnezzar speaking in the Bible. Now that means something. All right, that means something. That means that Nebuchadnezzar is a holy man of God, actually, at this point. And he writes it down. Because holy man of God spake as God gave them utterance. The Bible is not written it's just not a history of some people. Everybody that wrote something down, wrote it maybe as a history, but also wrote it from the authority of one that was anointed by God to do that. Right? So when we read, let's say, David, Psalms, we know it's written by David, but we also know that it's written by God. So we can read it and take it with the authority of God, even though it was penned by them. Today we were talking about Ecclesiastes, and you may not like Solomon's choices when it comes to his kingdom and marriages and all that stuff. I don't. But still, holy man of God. This is God speaking through the pen of Solomon. And it is inspired by the Holy Spirit. So when we read here from Daniel chapter 4, a lot of people don't realize this. You're reading the scripture written by Nebuchadnezzar, which was not a Jew. It was a nasty guy at one point, kind of think like Stalin or something like that. And yet, at this point, this is a holy man of God. He speaks to us great things, and we can see that here's a change, right? Compared to chapter 2. When we see arrogant Nebuchadnezzar, here we see him speaking things like, how great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. He is everlasting. He will never end. an amazing God, amazing King. So we'll continue and we'll read this dream. So he had I think this is written sort of after the dream and after the prophecy of what we're going to study, but it will take us now through the sequence of events, what happened. So let's go back in time now. And remember, what we read in chapter 3 and what we read now in chapter 4, there is a space, there is a lot of time that may take place, okay? So even though, it's kind of stitched together, this is an episode that probably happened significantly later. So let's read verse 4. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in mine house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid. And the thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. All right, so we learn something. This is revealing. This is a big boy talking, and he's telling you, I was scared. Right? Big boy don't like to say that. But here we have a man that will reveal it, and he tells us, I was afraid and I was troubled. Therefore made I a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, and that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. Then came in the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. We know this crowd. They have been around, and they were not very useful when it comes to interpretation of God's dream. But he calls them again, and I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. They couldn't tell me what it means. David, sit down. But at the last, Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God. All right, so what is he saying here? He tells us that actually Daniel, when he lived in Babylon, he was named Belteshazzar. So his name was Daniel, but the king changed his name to Belteshazzar. And he tells us that the name that he gave him was according to some god, that they had multiple gods. So I guess one of the gods was Belteshazzar, so you're going to have that name. And in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and before him I told a dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee. Notice the way he's speaking, all right? The spirit of the holy gods, what does that mean? So in the mind of Nebuchadnezzar, there's these deities, there's these gods. And so this is a person that's kind of the gods, and maybe that person hears from gods and so on. So we see that his attitude towards Daniel and other people is, okay, it's one of the people that have access to some kind of deity. And he says, tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and the interpretation thereof. Thus were the visions of my head in my bed. So let's read the dream. All right. I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew, and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the side thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. Right. So let's just think about it. So this tree, what do we see? I mean, it's in the midst. The Bible tells us that it's in the midst of the earth, right? So it's like a center, right? It's very central to everything. It tells us that the height was great, right? So you could see it from far off, and the height was really huge. The tree grew, and it was strong, so strong, and the height reached all the way to heaven. You could see it from all around, the side of it from all around. Very good leaves, so very prosperous, you may say. There was a lot of fruit for everyone, and so on. So, two things that come to my mind, right? So we know where this is going. This is going to go eventually to this whole dream, and whatever he's seeing is actually very specific. It's about him, Nebuchadnezzar, which is going to be explained. And it's going to be about how this tree is going to be crushed down, and there's going to be some lesson learned through that. But it's also good to see a bigger picture here, right? Because Nebuchadnezzar, in this time, represents something. Represents, again, it's a global power. It represents this high mountain. Remember when Jesus was tempted by the devil? One of the temptations that the devil threw at him is that he brought him to this high mountain, and he showed him all the kingdom of the earth, right? And that's kind of interesting. It will be one mountain that reaches all the way to heaven, and you can be on that mountain and you will rule everything. So this temptation of power, and essentially what the Bible tells us that in some ways King Nebuchadnezzar accomplished some of that, something like that, right? He became this great power. Another example of the same thing, I'm thinking the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, you had people that didn't want to be dispersed of all the earth, so they said what? Let us build a tower that reaches to heaven, and we'll make a name for ourselves, and then, we will, I guess, dominate everything. So that seems similar, and it seems like that is the ambition and tendency of the world's kingdom, to build something like that, right? To build this tower, to build this mountain, to build something that will rule and dominate the whole world. And this is where we, for example, it's a hint, this is a hint, where we get this idea of the world government. Not we get the idea, we see it, and then we don't want it to happen because we know it's going to be a kingdom of oppression. But when we look in the world and we see what the world is doing and where things are going, everything is pointing to the direction to build that power, to build the kingdom. And we need to understand who is behind this. I mean, who was behind it in the Tower of Babel? Who was behind it? All right, so we can speculate. Let's just assume it's the devil. The devil is doing this. It was all about not traveling anywhere, building one thing together, even though God clearly commanded, you need to go and populate the whole world. But they wouldn't do it. They wanted to concentrate in a big city and kind of dominate everything from there. But it's not what what God wanted. Then, of course, with Jesus, we know who was behind that. They say, I'm going to give you a mountain, and you're going to be ruling the whole world. So we know who is behind this. The devil wanted to do that through Jesus. As naive as it was, he thought maybe Jesus can bow down to him, worship him, and then he will make him a king over all the earth. Right? So when we see Nebuchadnezzar here, in some ways Nebuchadnezzar is a prototype of that happening. It crumbled, which is also a prophecy, but it shows to us this tendency of a king to build something and you rule everything. So in here, even though Nebuchadnezzar in the end is a Christian, Nebuchadnezzar plays a role of an antichrist here. That's a little bit confusing maybe, but he plays a role of the antichrist. He plays a role of one that builds a big kingdom that is not challenged by anybody, and who runs the show? Magicians, sorcerers, and all that stuff, right? It's a kingdom of the devil, really. So that's what we see here. I mean, that's what I see here. Then he says, verse 13, and I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and an holy one came down from heaven, and he cried aloud and said thus, hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beast get away from under it, and the fowl from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field. And let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of man, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. And this is provocative, what we are learning from this vision, and we'll see it explained. But this is what he explains, this is what I saw, and then somebody came and talked to me and told me all this thing. And that the one that came to him, the Bible tells us, he was a watcher and holy one. So I think this was God somehow appeared to him, probably through an angel, and he explained to him what is about to happen. So you see the tree, this beautiful tree, this mighty tree, this one mountain, this one thing that reaches to heaven. Guess what's going to happen with it? It's going down. It's consistent prophecy that this big thing is going to happen and then it's going to fall. We saw it with the beasts, that with the statue. We saw it with we see it with the beast. We see it now with the tree, right? That there is going to be an accomplishment, and I know that people a little bit panic and they are scared. What's happening to us? Like it is 100% guaranteed that Canada, for example, United States, are going to be part of that mountain, of that kingdom. If the king is going to rule the whole earth, then he will rule the whole earth. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to contribute. It doesn't mean that we need to, stay quiet when evil is happening in our country. It's okay to obviously stand against it, but let's see the big picture. And that is, the devil is working hard, and with the people that, Jesus did not bow down to the devil, right? That was the deal. You bow down to me and I'll give you this whole kingdom. And did he take the deal? He did not bow down, but will there be somebody that will bow down? There's always plenty of people ready to whatever. What is it that I have to do to get this kingdom, right? So the Bible tells us that this tree is going to be hewn down, the branches are going to be cut off, the leaves will be cut off, the fruits is going to be scattered, all the creatures that benefited from the shadow and from the food of the tree are gone. Only the stump is left there. Only the stump. So the bottom is just residue is left there, which is significant of what's going to happen with the king. And the Bible tells us that 7 times will pass over him. Now, this is most likely talking about 7 years. All right, 7 times. The Bible speaks about times, and half a time. And we do assume that this is talking about a year, all right? But, a little bit more loosely, we could say that there will be 7, some kind of period, some kind of circle, some kind of cycles can pass. So it may not necessarily be 7 years, but most likely it is 7 years, because year is a natural cycle, right? But technically a cycle could be maybe, a day is a cycle. So I don't think it was 7 days, because certain things happened in the time. Most likely it was 7 years, all right? And notice that the Bible tells us, or this watcher tells him the purpose for all this. And that's in verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent, right? So here's the intention, here's the purpose, that the living may know, and that's very important to realize, that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of man. So there is kingdom of man, many kingdoms, and he, this Most High, gives it to whomsoever he will, and set it up over it the basis of man. So the purpose of this dream, the purpose of what is going to happen with Nebuchadnezzar, is to teach a lesson to everybody in the world of who is in charge. And that is the Most High. And it is the Most High that gives it to whomsoever he will. Right? So this is an interesting lesson, an interesting principle that we learn, because, and a lot of people struggle with this idea, because people become powerful and then they are kicked off. People vote them in, vote them out. And so people believe that somehow they put them in power. A lot of people have the ambition to get into power. They work hard on it to get there, and then they get there. And if you tell them, you're there because of God, gives the power to whomsoever he will. And they will probably not accept it, right? Say, no, I know what I did, and I got here with my own craft. And yet, I believe this is true. This is true. So when I see strange people ruling in the world affairs, whether it's provincial government and so on, that gives me some consolation that God knows what's happening, and He will have even people like, let's say, Biden or Trudeau rule, for some purpose. And actually, Biden and Trudeau are really not that bad compared to Nebuchadnezzar, really, when you think about it. Or Stalin. Would you prefer Trudeau or Stalin? Right? If you had the two choices, right? So, I would say Nebuchadnezzar was a lot very arrogant, and basically there's no rule of law almost at all. So let's read verse 19. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour, so shocked, and his thoughts troubled him. The king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. Belteshazzar answered and said, My lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. All right. So Daniel listens to the dream. Nobody could explain what it means, but Daniel understands. And it's interesting what he says here. He says, My lord, this is Daniel, a Christian, a godly man, and he tells to his boss, to the king, My lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. He does not want this dream to become true when it comes to Nebuchadnezzar, and he actually calls him my lord, and says, I wish this was for your enemies. Which I think I don't know. I mean, it tells me it makes that definitely provoking, isn't it? That knowing who Nebuchadnezzar was, Daniel had some experience with Nebuchadnezzar, because remember, Nebuchadnezzar was about to kill him, including all the other magicians, and they saved their neck at the last minute, kind of. Then I'm sure that Daniel knew what happened with the fiery furnace and about his 3 friends. And I bet you Daniel didn't bow down either, right? So I don't know, somehow he was not part of that story. So they caught these guys, and he knew what was about to happen, the anger, the arrogance, and the wickedness, really, of Nebuchadnezzar. And yet, his attitude to this king is, I would say, almost of... Actually, in the context of the next chapter, chapter 5, it's almost of admiration and really great respect. Which is the provocative part of it, isn't it? Because it's not some kind of a wonderful person that rules perfectly, but Daniel has great, honors him, and I would say even likes him, cares for him, right? So that makes you wonder, how do we approach, what if you work for a boss or for authority that is, quite crooked in many ways? What would you do, Well, if you care for the authority, you're going to be a blessing. If God puts you in that position, you're going to be a blessing there. That's what I think, right? I mean, think about what David, for example, what David had become. David was ruling his nation, but then he was tempted to commit terrible crime. Committed adultery with the wife of one of his best soldiers. Then in order to cover it up, he tried to lie about it, make hair to lie about it. If that didn't work out, he got him killed. And a year later, just not quite a year, just before the baby was born, his friend Nathan, who was a man of God, prophet, came to him and helped him to uncover the sin in a very wise way. The way he did it, right? Now, is David at this point a nice guy? David used to be a nice guy in the past. He was definitely more tender and more genuine person. But at this time, when he is about to have a baby, David is not so nice. He is an arrogant guy. And remember the story that Nathan gave him, right? He gives this made-up story that there is this person that comes visit, or he has a visitor, comes from a distance, and instead of go and butcher one of his thousands of sheep, he goes to his neighbor, takes it away from him, but it's the only sheep, takes his sheep from him, it's the only sheep this neighbor has got, it's almost like a pet to him, and he says, I'm not going to touch my sheep, I'm going to take yours. And David got so mad about it, and it obviously should make you mad, but what is interesting, David says, this man is worthy of death, right? That's not true, that is, by any law in Israel, that's not worthy of death. This is evil, definitely, but not as he thinks. And what happens sometimes is that when people are corrupted, and they do a lot of evil things, their judgment tends to be over the top. They tend to be very cruel and harsh. It is because we appreciate that we have been forgiven. It is because we appreciate that we need mercy, then it helps us to be merciful to others. If we understand that, okay, I'm a failure, I have failed many people before, and am aware of it, then it's a lot easier to be merciful to people around. And maybe that's the purpose. God will let us to fall sometimes, just to remind us that we need God and His mercy. There's a purpose for something that we think that's evil, and certainly sin is evil, and our failure is evil. And yet, going through a sin and failure actually does something good to us, and that is to put us a little bit into different perspective, different notch, right? So what we see here, I think from Daniel, he's doing a good job of being a blessing to his master, the king. And he cares for him, he doesn't want him to suffer. And he actually says, he tells him, what this is all about, so let's just read it. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto the heaven, and the side thereof to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and upon whose branches the fowl of the heaven had the habitation. It is thou, O King, that art grown and become strong. For thy greatness is grown and reaches to heaven, and thy dominion is to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and an holy one coming down from heaven, and saying, Hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over. This is the interpretation. 24. O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which is come upon the Lord the King, that they shall drive thee from man, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till, and here's the purpose again, thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of man, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. That's the purpose of this. Now, why does the king need to learn this? He certainly doesn't have that deeply in his heart and mind, right? This whole idea that he is where he is by the will and mercy of God. He thinks he did it, right? He thinks he did it. And the Bible tells us, no, you are where you are because I put you there. And people struggle with it. This is also true about, let's say, Pharaoh. Pharaoh certainly thought, well, I was born here. This is where I am. And yet the Bible tells us in Romans chapter 9 that Pharaoh was put there by God in order for God to demonstrate His power on him. So when we observe certain things in this world, we see people in power, and they will tell you how they got there. Maybe they worked on it hard. Maybe certain turn of events just put them in that position. Somebody was born into family. Like our Prime Minister, right? Was just born to a fancy name. And, he's got certain looks, he's got certain whatever, and so he ended up being in power. And he certainly probably thinks, I have accomplished something, maybe like Nebuchadnezzar. But the Bible tells us that's not how it is. It is the Most High that rules in the kingdom of man. We have gone through some difficult times lately in Alberta, in Canada, and people are concerned that we are losing something. We're losing our country or whatever, right? But the Bible tells us that God, the Most High, rules in the kingdom of man. It is God that is still in charge, even over, let's say, our government and who knows what. Verse 26, and whereas they commanded to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee. Okay, so the fact that there was still a stump was a revelation that he's not going to be completely destroyed. That the Bible tells us that thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee. So it's not going to lose the kingdom. After that thou shalt have known that the heavens do rule. We learn, we pray, for example, in the Lord's Prayer, right? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I do believe that God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Now people say, well, what are you talking about? Look at all the evil. Yeah, but even evil is used by God for His purposes and for some intent, right? So this is very important that we see a lot of things in this world. When we see them and we are panicking and we don't like them, it's very tempting to start panic and to see, okay, we've got to do something to save it. And it's not necessarily wrong to try to save it and pray for the country and maybe do something for it. But at the same time, it's also good to remember that God is in charge. And then he tells the king in verse 7, Wherefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable unto thee, and break off thy sins by righteousness, and thy iniquities by showing mercy to the poor, if it may be a lengthening of thy tranquility. So he is challenging, repent, humble yourself, turn around, because you're not on the right path. God is going to humble you. I think if God is giving him this dream, I think that Nebuchadnezzar is still full of himself. He's a very proud man. Hence, this was going to have to happen. And so he says, break off thy sins by righteousness. I think in some ways, if I see it here, is a challenge. Turn to God, repent. Do something with your, you're not on the right path. And also show mercy to the poor. So what does it tell you? Was he merciful? Probably not. Did he dominate the poor? Probably not. That's what powerful people, rich people always do. How can I scam them some more? How can I be even more in power and rob the poor man? So again, a lot of hints and a lot of signs that this is not a very nice God. We see Daniel being very gentle actually to Nebuchadnezzar, respecting him, giving him honor, even, but telling him the truth. And essentially he's telling him, you have a problem with the sin. You have a problem with the sin, you have a problem with pride. You have a problem with robbing the people. Show them mercy. Repent. If it may be a lengthening of thy tranquility. The Bible tells us this may preserve you, or this will give you life in some ways. And I know this is in the context of, let's say, physical being. I don't know to what degree this is a necessarily salvation plan. But the Bible is not very crystal clear in this chapter about that. I personally believe that he was saved. How do I believe that? Because holy man God spake as God gave them utterance. So that's the only thing I know. So I know that the words of Nebuchadnezzar are in the Bible because he was a holy man. So he was saved. We know that in chapter 2 he was not saved. So somewhere something happened, and we can see that God planted in the vicinity of Nebuchadnezzar a person like Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego. And they were testimony, maybe through what they said, through what they did, how they stood against the commandment of God. And through all these things, they had a huge impact on the life of Nebuchadnezzar, even to a point that, for example, here, Daniel tells the king, King, I don't want you to go through this. We've got to do something. What is it that we have to do? Break off thy sins. Right? That almost sounds to me, you need to acknowledge your sins. You need to realize that you're a sinner. You know, I don't know to what degree this is just repentance of sins, and to what degree this is shaking up, you need mercy from God. You need something, right? So I don't want to, get stuck in this mud. But the Bible clearly says that Daniel is a testimony to the king. Just like, let's say, Nathan was a testimony to David. And he helps him, and he's a witness, even to a man that's not very nice at this point. Crooked man. And yet God sends there somebody to give a gospel, give a mercy. The worst thing that you can do to another person is basically not to give them the truth, right? It's really sad, some people leave, with regards to what we are going through. To me that's sad. I mean, what do you want? Do you want to just come and me tell you only what you like to hear? This is silly, like if you really want me to care for you, then you want me to tell you the truth, even though it's going to hurt. But how often it is, people love to come and like to hear something, but when they'll tell them something that's not pleasant to hear, then okay, we're out of here. So stop criticizing those churches out there that you say that they're so declined and it's like terrible what's going on there. I mean, that's exactly what you get there. You get what you want. It will hear, you have the tinkling ears. You're going to get what you are asking for. Same thing is from, let's say, the parents. The kids love that the parents are not restrictive and give them whatever they want. That's not a good parent. If you care for your parent, you're going to be saying, Dad, thank you for giving me a whooping, all right? Or thank you for restricting me from having something I really, really want. That's a good dad. And it's a good mom. But they do that. And so I see that here we see Daniel, a faithful man. He's telling his boss, he's not afraid of him anymore, I think, because he has his position. I think they probably have a lot more casual communication at this point, right? But he's going to tell him, you've got a problem with the sin. This is a good, that's a friend. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, right? The Bible says. What's the next verse? Faithful are the wounds of the friend, but something about the song of the fools. What is that? Yeah, So this is a faithful thing from a man of God, all right? So that's how it ended this part, and then this whole came to pass. So we'll read it in verse 28. All this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. That's how it happened. Because God was going to do it, was prophesied. Verse 29, at the end of 12 months. So it took a year from this prophecy to the fulfillment. He walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. The king spake and said. Now notice, the Bible tells us where his heart is. What is his attitude? Is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? So we can see the attitude of the king, and this was there all along. And and I don't know, has that ever happened to you? That you look at yourself and started thinking, look what I've done, or look at me. Maybe you're a super humbled person, but it happened to me, that I don't know, it can be a piece of maybe something that you made or something that you said, or maybe how many clicks you got in a video, or maybe the kind of music you created. I've wrote some music, and people liked it, and they wanted me to sing it again and again. And the temptation is always there. You're amazing or whatever, right? And this kind of thought in your heart, or when we play a game and you win, right? Right? You may be boosted and very boastful person. Well, that's just the same freaking problem that Nebuchadnezzar had, right? Thinking of himself so high. Look at me. This is what I have accomplished. I'm so amazing. I don't think there's anybody so great as I am. And then he's talking about his majesty, his might and honor and greatness, right? Now, verse 31. While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. So right in that moment, when he was still thinking this, he didn't even say this, I guess. Maybe he did. Maybe he said it and there were people around him that were listening to it. I don't know, right? But right in the moment, God came down and said, okay, it's over. You departed. The kingdom is departed from thee. Reminds me of King Nebuchadnezzar, right? When King Herod, when King Herod did this oration to the people of Tyre, remember that? How they came to him and said, okay, we want to listen to your speech. And they really didn't care for him as much. If you look at the context, it's like I don't know, is it chapter 5 or a little later after Stephen? 12, is it? Yeah. So he gives this oration to the people of Tyre, and they give him praises. And they didn't care for King Herod. They just do that in order to basically receive some favor, because their life in some ways depended on his favor, right? So they, sweet talk him, and they said, this is amazing. This is just amazing speech. I mean, if this is not a speech of man, this is a speech of God. And at that point, when they said that, and he didn't do anything about it, they said, hold on, you should say, hold on, I'm not God, He took it and he was proud about it. It's like, well, okay, I'm kind of amazing, am I not? And so at that point, God struck him and he died right there in front of them. Didn't have that mercy that God had here with Nebuchadnezzar, because Nebuchadnezzar was not going to be dead with that. He was going to survive this and go through something else. Has anybody seen the lady that was joking about COVID and then was struck on the podium? Yeah. Like literally the same. And she's what did she say? You guys remember? Well, I took one vax, second vax, I was boosted, and then she said, I guess Jesus must like me or something, right?
Jesus loves me more. Jesus loves me the most.
Jesus loves me the most. And at that point she collapsed on the podium.
Yeah. And knocked her head good.
Broke her skull.
Yeah. Yeah.
She survived.
People were laughing. That was a comedy show.
People thought it was a joke. And, maybe it was a coincidence. I think it's a little odd coincidence. Why do you bring Jesus to this anyway, So there, I think when this woman did this, I think it was a pride, and she's told a lesson. Maybe she's like Nebuchadnezzar. Maybe she's going to think twice now. What the heck just happened to me? That sounds a little bit spooky. But God does allow these things to happen right there. And of course, it's on video. I think a lot of people in the world are thinking, whoa. There's probably a lot of people that dismiss it. But a lot of people will say, whoa, maybe there is God. And I notice that God often does that to highlight His glory over the man's. And when man steals the glory and God strikes that person, He does it in such a way so that it's obvious to everybody. There was another person that I remember I heard about, and he was going around and he said, if you're a safe person and if you are right with God, you shouldn't be sick. And I think everybody, who was it? It was I forget his name. It was one of those charismaniacs. And he was saying basically that if you are a proper Christian and live in faith and right with God, then you will not die on disease. You will die perfectly healthy, strong in an old age. Like Moses, for example, right? The funny thing is that this particular man died on Alzheimer, and he was dying like several years. It's a bit of a lesson to anybody that knew this. Okay, do you notice? I mean, this is a liar, and this is not quite true. And it almost feels like, oh, you're boasting like this. Almost like God let him die maybe the hardest and the longest, just to make a point. So we see this in verse 31. We read how at that point, when he said that, at that point, he hears the voice from heaven. Okay, it's over. The kingdom is departed from thee, and they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of heaven, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. The lesson of God to Nebuchadnezzar is, you did not get there by your power. You think you did, but you were given this by God. And I know we are talking about king now and powers that be, and we look at them and we say, we are ruled by these people that got there, and we need to oust them out. You hear like the guy from Calgary, right? We need to oust them out. We need to make them accountable, and we need to kind of restore some kind of a green utopia in Canada again, where we will have a rule of law. And I don't know. I think God is doing something, even through people like Trudeau. God is accomplishing something through Trudeau. God is accomplishing something through Biden. Who is going to be the next president of the United States? Biden is old. He may die in the office. They may get rid of him. If he dies soon, then Kamala Harris is going to be the president. And do you think that's going to be evil, right? It's going to be a problem. Who knows what's going to be, right? So there is this, we've dealt with it for a long time, and it's very, very tempting to just see the world only through that way. We need to depose our evil governments, put there good people. But let's not forget this dimension. That while it is true that Nebuchadnezzar, I'm sure, was very intelligent, an industrial man, and was able to accomplish what he accomplished, that's not quite completely nonsense. Then he goes around, look what I have accomplished, because he was in it. But at the same time, the Bible says no. Right? No. It's not like Nebuchadnezzar came and everything was built, and then he lies about it. Oh, that's what I built. I think he did build it. Right? I think he did build it. And yet the Bible tells us, don't puff yourself about these kind of things, even though you did do it. Because you wouldn't be able to do it if God didn't put you there, if God didn't give you ability to do these things, and who knows what, how, right? The glory, even if we accomplish it, the glory should go to God. People deposed governments and so on. They say, we did it. Why not give God the glory? Even if you accomplish something that seems to be kind of your accomplishment, why don't you give God glory, like God is teaching Nebuchadnezzar how he should do it. Verse 33, the same hour was the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men, and did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. Right, so this is strange and crazy. People have speculated what was happening here. Some people even suggest this was some kind of a disease, some sort of a psychological disease, and who knows what. I don't care. The bottom line is that he behaved like an animal. And the Bible actually, where does it say? Yeah, in verse 16, it tells us that his heart will be changed from man's heart, and he will have a beast's heart, right? So, and again, speaking about this to be prophetic in some ways, about the Antichrist in the end of time, the Bible tells us that his name is 666. I explained the other day, I wonder if there's something to do with the 6 days of creation. That God created man on the 6 days, on the 6th day. And also on the 6th day, though, he created all the animals that are running on the ground. So that's something we have common with all the creatures. We were created on the same day. Adam last, but before that, all the lions and beasts and oxen and everything like that. So I do see number 6 in it. It's a number of beast and it's a number of man. Number 6, right? There's a little hint if that's of any value, I guess. So again, in some ways prophetic. And even though here we have a man, here we have a beast. We have weird, isn't that goat of Mendes? Isn't that partially man and partially beast, for example, right? See that there? So the power is, there's something very nasty about this thing, and about this phenomenon, about this symptom of basically he's losing his mind and behaving like an animal, eating like an animal, like crawling like an animal, not caring about himself. His nails were like claws. I mean, what a sight, right? And what is it? I almost think like this is what pride, think about it this way, huh? This is what pride and wickedness makes out of man. I mean, when you think about what you see, really when sin is completely abundant, when you see completely caricature of a people completely driven by some wickedness, they start to look weird. Even like physically, they start to be less human, and sometimes they become creepy. I mean, literally, what do people do with, let's say, the hair? They kind of bundle it together to these weird, slimy things. You know what I mean? That's not human, right? That's like, or when people put tattoos over themselves, and then rings everywhere, and sometimes people do black eyes. Have you seen those people? Completely, the white is completely black, and then they look like animals at that point. If you see savages. Did you wanna?
Yeah, their tongues too. They split their tongues.
They split their tongues. I heard that some African tribe or something where they were actually sharpening their teeth to a point, I guess, so that it'd be more beastly. Right? Isn't that interesting? That when he is left to himself and sin dominates his life, that he behaves more and more and almost looks more and more like an animal, like a beast of the field. To me, that's interesting because that's what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. And the Bible is telling us his story. I mean, that's where you're going. You're going to become completely dominated by your lusts and by your flesh, and you become like a beast, driven by just lusts and instinct, I guess. And then isn't that what people do, right? It's just basically, and I do that before sometimes. Like an animal, like a beast. I forget what it was, but it was something like that, I guess. So that's something to consider. And then in verse 34, at the end of the days, right? So at the end of the 7 times, again, presumably after 7 long years, he says this: I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes unto heaven, and my understanding returned unto me. So it tells us that he went insane. But now he got it back. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. These are similar words what we read at the beginning of the chapter. When you look at what he says in the beginning of the chapter, how great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. I think here is a man speaking after this episode that happened. So I think he got saved somewhere there. Somewhere these 7 times, maybe towards the end, maybe completely in the end, somewhere he buckled and he said, to you belongs the glory. And we don't have the sinner's prayer recorded by Nebuchadnezzar, but we know somewhere it happened here. And I bless the Most High, and I praise and honor him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say unto him, why doest or what doest thou? So this is a great confession of a man that is finally broken and finally comes to terms with the fact that God rules everything. And we have people in power, a lot of wicked people, a lot of powerful people that are full of themselves. And hey, maybe we can pray for some of them, you know. Lord, send them somebody that they will be willing to listen to. And maybe they can, you know, give them some listen. Lord, help Christians that are in the vicinity of these people. Help them stand strong like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did, right? And show them that we give more credence and more honor and power to our Father in heaven than we give to man. And I think in some ways some of these powers that be, they have seen it. They have seen, you know, I've seen pastors in Edmonton and Calgary saying, no, the Lord commanded us to gather and worship together, and so we will. And is it going to cost us something? Then so be it. I think that was a good thing to show to the government that God is greater than them. And maybe, you know, even some of these people will give God glory like Nebuchadnezzar did. I guess there is hope for everybody. The Bible also says, verse 36, at the same time my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom my honor and brightness returned unto me. And my counselors and my lords sought unto me, and I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. So he was completely restored, and even in a bigger way, you know, greater power and majesty. And I think now we're talking about a man that has found a lot of wisdom, because he gives credence, he gives honor to God, whom he fears, which was not there before. So he was mighty, he was powerful, he was skillful, but now on top of that there is a great amount of fear of God. And with fear comes wisdom, with humility comes glory. And so we see some great end to this wicked man. And it's a great story. I look forward to see about, you know, the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. It's my brother, you know, our brother. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways are judgment, and those that walk in pride he is able to abase. And he knows what he's talking about. Those who walk in pride he is able to abase. We live in a world where the devil is building hard a kingdom for himself. Isaiah 14:12. He said in his heart, I will be as the Most High. That's his plan. He tried to trick people in a Babel to get his kingdom accomplished. He tried to trick Jesus to put himself in that kind of position. He certainly has been trying since then, and there is plenty of people that are willing to cooperate. Whether it's Vatican, whether it's Islam or Jews or whatever, all these people, they're definitely part of it. But that thing is going down. And blessed is everyone that is humbling themselves, and maybe even humbled by God before it's too late. Because then they can escape the judgment that's coming. And the judgment is coming for sure. The kingdom that we see in this world is coming down. So an interesting story, isn't it? So let's understand the world around us in this context. Right? Is there a lot of evil happening in our days? Is there a lot of arrogant people running our governments, and you feel like you have no remorse? You know, you have no way to stop them. It feels like they have a momentum, and they're just steamrolling over any laws or anything that's just and pure. I feel like that sometimes, right? In some ways powerless. Even though we have laws and we have all these codes that are protecting our freedoms and liberties and everything like that, these people just go no matter what, just go over. But the Bible tells us that most God, the Most High, rules. They don't rule. The Most God, the Most High rules. Now, why would God then allow evil to blossom in our country? because so he can demonstrate his power on the person when he destroys them. I mean, God did allow, for example, Israelites to grow up into a great nation in Egypt, and towards the end, it was not fun to be in. Why should they complain then? Why did you guys put us in this place? God had something in mind to get them out of that land. God will allow, towards the end, people to be oppressed. Hence, we will suffer tribulation. I mean, the people suffer tribulation there. And so we will suffer tribulation. But perhaps some of these people that are actually causing the trouble and the evil and oppression, maybe even some of them will get saved. It certainly happened to Saul, for example, right? Saul got saved. Nebuchadnezzar got saved. Manasseh probably got saved. All these wicked people, and yet they turned and served the purpose of God in the end. And in some ways, they were extremely powerful by doing that. Here we have Nebuchadnezzar sending a letter to the whole empire. He's telling everybody needs to give respect to the God of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This is that's an interesting story. I find it quite encouraging for what we are going through as a nation, as a people here. Amen. Well, our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your heavenly kingdom that's being prepared for us. And Lord, we do pray that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And when we say that, we often have a tendency to think, Lord, do something nice and good for us here. And yet, we need to realize, and we do realize now, that sometimes thy will is for evil to blossom for a while. And for the powers that be actually succeed in their futile plan to dominate everything and put themselves instead of you. And you let them do it, just so that you can then destroy it in the end. So help us to live in peace, even though we see evil prospering in this world. Let us, Lord, live in confidence that you are indeed one that rules not just the heaven, but also everything in the world, in this earth. And so to you belongs all the glory. Help us to stand faithfully in whatever we go through as individuals, as country. And Lord, bless, help be a blessing to people around us and a light to the lost world. In Jesus' name, amen.